this is Dr. Liz with the Hypnotize Me podcast. And this month we're focusing on goals. A lot of people call these New Year's resolutions, right? They make these resolutions. I call them goals. And I've done a couple of podcasts about how to achieve goals because it's one of my favorite topics. And I truly believe hypnosis also helps you get there. But today I'm really happy to introduce Ralph Campbell and interview him on the podcast. He has spent 23 years in really high performance leadership positions. He's a personal and professional coach, and he's been honored just over and over and over again. He co-founded 2 separate leadership training development companies, and he was named as one of the 50 most powerful African Americans in 2012 in Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade counties. Those are huge counties in South Florida. And he's also been honored by the Broward County school system. That's one of the largest school systems in the United States. So he has quite the rack of honors behind him. And he was gracious enough to be on the podcast today and talk about this transformational model of coaching that he has founded and really put together this really unique topography of it. One of the reasons that I thought he would be a really good person for my listeners to hear about and hear about his model is also how he used hypnosis at a critical point in his life to help him clarify where he wanted to go in terms of his own personal goals. He talks about that during the interview and how supportive it was of him. So let's get started. Let's jump right into what you do currently, and then I'm going to ask about how hypnosis helped you get there. I've known Ralph for a year or two, I mean, right?
Yes.
I've actually been aware of his presence much longer than that, just from like seeing him different places, show up on my Facebook feed of friends and all kinds of stuff. So we both went through this transformational training at different times in our lives, but we've both been through that training. And so that is our connection. And I understand we had talked before. He had hypnosis quite a few years back, but he felt like it really helped him change his life and accomplish the goals that he wanted to accomplish. So we're going to talk some about what you're doing these days and then also jump right into how hypnosis helped you get there.
Great.
Okay. So tell me what you're doing these days. Like, what is your big project?
Well, about 6-7 months ago, I started my new company called Ralph at 2.0, and it's a performance consulting company. And I've done a lot of personal development work on myself over the last 16 or 17 years, and I've always been in some coaching capacity with people. And so what we do is we work with small organizations, mainly in Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach counties, governments, nonprofits, individuals, and we support them in elevating how they perform in their individual lives and as far as their and how their company operates.
Okay, so the focus is both their personal life and their professional lives.
Correct.
And how often do you see those two intersect?
Well, it's really a combination. Most of my clients are organizations. So the personal life becomes a byproduct of what we're working on. So it really, we go in because the organization has something that they want to elevate, and it begins to manifest itself in, obviously, personal effectiveness, which is at the root of all of it.
Okay, so the personal effectiveness really is at the root of professional effectiveness.
Correct.
What you see.
Correct.
Okay, so then there tends to be quite a bit of overlap there. Like, let's look at what's holding you back from really performing professionally where you need to be.
That's correct. What I found over the last these 20 plus years that I've been doing coaching, when I started 3 other companies. I was a CEO of a big company in Broward County as well. And so I've always been coaching people. And what I found was that people never were able to get to what the root was of what got them, quote unquote, stuck in their professional lives and personal lives. And it was always, I call it the yo-yo diet coaching. Right? the next Tony Robbins seminar, the next self-help book, the next website, the next you name it, the next book to read, the next software we're going to download and use to be more effective. But that never got at the root. And so the problem began to always show its ugly self again. And so one of the things I always promised myself that if I went on my own and I started doing personal consulting was I would come up with a methodology that supported people getting at the root. So we're not doing the Band-Aid, that we're actually looking at what's causing me to be this way and how our business continue to go in this vicious cycle. And so really I get to the root, or we work on getting to the root of the issue.
Really interesting. So can you give us a brief synopsis of this methodology that you came up with?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do a lot of reading, and one of the persons that really interests me, her name is Nicole Merchant. And Nicole in 2015 is elected to a group, or what's called Thinkers 50, and they are the quote unquote top 50 thinkers in the United States or nationwide, depending on whose point of view you look at. And she had a phrase that she coined, and she's got a new book coming out. The book is going to be called, and it may be out by now, but her phrase is called Uniqueness, Onlyness. Onlyness. Okay. And I never heard that word before. And it's basically, it says, I'm paraphrasing, that we're all special, we're all unique based on our own worldview, based on our own experiences, our upbringing, our relationships we formed throughout our life. And that there's something powerful and unique that we bring to the party every day based on our own dreams and aspirations. And that we all have our own, some people call it the emotional fingerprint. That's only one thing that Ralph does, that's especially to his practice, that makes his work profound or make a difference with other people. And so I do a lot of reading and a lot of workshops. In the 90s, I did LifeSpring, and I did Landmark Forum. I did Radical Honesty with Dr. Blanton, and the list goes on and on. I was a certified junkie. And
that's great.
I say that jokingly because it was the most powerful experience of my life to kind of learn about myself. And so I began to develop my own methodology, which we call obviously the Ralph 2.0 methodology. And at the root of it was people live mainly out of two contexts. And this is just an idea, so it's not the truth. I want your listeners to just really be aware of that I have a belief that we live out of two contexts. And one context is this quest for rewards, right? The next promotion, the next car, the next marriage, more money, like the more. And we get psyched about this reward. And so we're always on a quest. So I call it the quest context, right? We're always looking for something new to empower us. And then the other context is that human beings are always living in this survival context. Like we're always trying to protect ourselves. And if you go back in time, it's really trying to not be hurt, not be harmed. And so everything we do, we organize our thoughts and actions around really not really protecting ourselves. And so usually if you look for yourself, and organizations look, usually those two are always the loudest. If we begin to dissect companies' patterns, it's usually, we're on to the next thing, but we never perfected the first thing we did. Mm-hmm. The second thing is we're acting in such a way because we're trying to protect ourselves from something that we fear is going to hurt our company, it's going to hurt our employees. And so that's the heart of our methodology, is uncovering, what this is for them, that they've created this, I call it a topology, and I call it the topology that we live in. We work in this cycle. And so the topology is a loop. Mm-hmm. It's a loop. And so we live in this topology where we have something that happens. I call it a cue that triggers it. And then there's something that we do, right? People call it a habit. We start doing it repeatedly. It's the action I do. And then I have, which is the main part of the context, this reward I'm shooting for, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Right, I get something out of it. There's some payoff I'm getting, some reinforcement, and so then I get my reward. I lose weight, I gain weight, I lose weight. I have this new relationship, and then I have this feeling that comes to me. Right, I'm excited, and then it goes away, and then it takes me that trigger again to go back into that topology. And topologies are both healthy and unhealthy. Right, people want to lose weight, they get in a topology. So what's my cue? Well, my cue for me is I put my gym shoes by the door. So I wake up, there's the gym shoes. So then Ralph goes to the gym. Ralph works out. Ralph comes home, and my reward is, yay, I get to have that banana and a donut. Yay.
Right.
Right? I worked. It's a reward, even though the donut's unhealthy and it goes against losing actual weight. But it's not so much about the thing I want as it isn't much about the cycle I'm in. And I think human beings understand the topology that they're in every day, then they can do something about it. And for me, I never got answers. I always got, you're just doing what you're doing. Get over yourself. Just, keep at it. And, most of our practice, we focus on, well, okay, I'm in a topology of getting promoted at work. And so I know what my cue is. I know what I'm doing. And I know I have this reward. But is what I'm doing supporting me getting what I want? And a lot of times we'll find out it's not. So we have to switch the cue and put a different cue in place. But most people don't know that they're living inside this topology. And topology is very, very powerful if you just look at your life and look at the cycle that you're in. Look at your children. We all operate in this, what's the reward? And at the foundation of it, Dr. Bonnet, is that we release what I call the happy chemicals. When one gets a reward, we release several chemicals, mainly dopamine. And dopamine is released right before that reward, and that gives us energy. And that I'm going for my reward, and then I get the reward, and then a body releases dopamine. That's that good feeling people say. People say, oh, I feel so great today. I just worked out. Well, endorphins were released, or dopamine was released. I got this reward. Right. And then we metabolize it, we burn it, and it goes away. And I go, oh, I'm not as happy today, doctor. And people can't get to the source of why they're not happy. It's not their problem. It's that we metabolized this chemical. But it all happens in this topology. So it's kind of complex.
Interesting.
I explained it, but that's in a nutshell. That's kind of our methodology.
Is really identifying, okay, that topology, what's the cycle going on? Where can we change that so that it's more productive for you, so that you can accomplish what you really want to accomplish, both personally and professionally?
Correct.
Okay. How do you see hypnosis fitting into that?
Well, I stumbled upon hypnosis. This going back 13 years. At the time, I was number 2 at this insurance agency in Broward County. I had just had twin boys. They were like 2 months old. And I was in my second startup. We had been in business for about a year. So I had 3 big projects going on at the same time, and I was stuck. I was working 60 hours a week at the insurance job, twin boys that I didn't expect. I expected 1, didn't expect 2. And then I started a startup a year before where I was working all my weekends. So you talk about a hamster on a wheel. I didn't know if I was coming or going. And I pride myself on having a lot of smart people in my life and a lot of great coaches and mentors. And I couldn't figure it out. Right? I couldn't, quote unquote, not a word, unstuck myself. And a person said, hey, go to this individual and get hypnotized, and possibly you'll find maybe some answers. And I was a skeptic, I'll be honest with you. I had this interpretation that something was wrong with people that got hypnotized and the woo-wee movement, and that's no empirical evidence that it worked. And, I come from an educated family. All my sisters have PhDs or JDs. So it's, all about give me that evidence. At that time, 13 years ago, it wasn't mainstream. I don't think it still is mainstream, in my opinion, but it's a lot more than it was if I go back 13 years.
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely more mainstream now.
A lot more mainstream.
There's a lot more research now.
Yes. A lot more research and data. Again, I was naive, and that was my own, my own stuff. And so I went to this person to help me. And so he put me under, and I had the breakthrough actually occurred about a week or 2 after. And I started getting clear about this stuff. The 3 main projects that I couldn't figure out what to do with them. And what it helped me realize was, it got to the root of what was causing me to be stuck. And remember, I said most of my work never got me to an answer. It always got me to more explanations. They're always describing what to do. I call that interpretive language. But it didn't give me any access to get to the root of what was causing the problem or the upset.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to the breakthrough. And the breakthrough for me was it's simple today that I talk with people about, but it's very complex and one has to dissect themselves to get to it. But for me, it was two big things. One, and this is just my personal belief, you cannot prioritize your commitments. And what I mean by that is we have all these to-do lists, right? And that's called prioritizing commitments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they have a lot of research on this, millions of papers written, that doesn't work. What works typically is you do about 30 to 40% on a great day.
Mm-hmm.
That goes away or you recycle it. And that's what I was doing. I had these 3 big projects and I had them with these levels of commitment. And what I found out through my hypnosis is that you can't prioritize them. You have to choose what matters most.
Mm-hmm.
Not in judgment, choose what matters most. And so the 2 that mattered most at the time, A, was my day job. That's how I'm going to pay for my children. And B, were the kids being born. So I let go of the company I founded or co-founded, Summit Education. It's still around today. It's doing awesome. And I divested myself and I was no longer an owner and doing the day-to-day work and all the weekend work I was doing. And then the second was, I said, having it all. So it was having 2 versus 3, but it's still the context of you can have both but just choose the commitments that's most passionate to you. And I have a word for having it all. And the word I come up with is called dignified work. And the definition of dignified work is work that brings meaning to a person's life.
Yes.
So having it all and dignified work. And so I put myself on this journey of I'm only going to be in situations moving forward where I'm having it all, right? All the fun that comes with it and joy and passion and aliveness. And then 2, that work has to be dignified work. It has to bring meaning to my life. And that's part of a methodology that we use at Ralph 2.0 is having people find things that bring dignified work to their life.
Yes, absolutely. So that sounds fantastic. Like it sounds like a real growth process for you that happened. It sounds like you really got to the root of it. And it sounds values-based too. Like what matters to you most? Okay, for you, it was really supporting your kids, right? Supporting these 2 new beautiful lives that were in the world and doing something you're passionate about and not being distracted by, this company, this company, and this company. Like particularly entrepreneurs, definitely the ideas flow, right? It's so easy.
And
like I'm going to start this and I'm going to start this. And before you know it, you're overwhelmed.
And just to add on, the bigger thing besides that breakthrough was the result, right? You can talk about people doing things, but until there's a result, a lot of times people have interpretations that maybe that didn't cause it. Maybe it was something else you did, or maybe it was by accident, right? And for me, 7 or 8 years later, I became the CEO of that insurance company. So that's a result. That's because I didn't know what I was going to do that when the kids were born. Maybe I was going to leave the insurance business. That was one thought. So I became the CEO about 8 years later. And then, of course, the boys are kicking. They're 13 years old. They're being boys, and they're going through the trials and tribulations. But that's always a joy. So those are 2 tangible results you could say that came out of that 1 hour and a half meeting.
Right. Wonderful. That really sounds transformative at the time.
Yes, it was.
So what do you advise someone? Let's say you're working with, you're going into an organization and you're trying to help them get unstuck by looking at the root cause of what's going on by using your method, the Ralph 2.0 method. And you really discover that this isn't a good fit for somebody, right? What kind of process do you use with them in terms of guiding them of like, hey, something needs to change here. The path needs to change. Like, do you find resistance to that sometimes? Like, oh, I'm clear that this is what I need to do, but I can't make that change. How do you help them get over that hump?
Yeah, the good news is that I am very picky on the clients that I take on because a lot of people are set in their ways and it's natural to be set in our ways. And I think that a lot of coaches and consultants, they get stuck there because they're trying to fix somebody. Like you need to know this. You have to understand this. This is powerful. And that doesn't give anybody access because habits are formed over time, as you know, and they become embedded in our brain. We're wired. And this has been proven scientifically.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot erase that which you've learned. You cannot unlearn something. That's impossible. And it's been proven about 1 billion times. You can only learn something new and leave behind that which you've learned and honor it. You always have it, but it doesn't have you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look for people that their why matches my why. So then it's
Gotcha.
the friction is already gone. They understand that they can't get there from where they are. And perhaps I have something to offer that will support them. And so a lot of coaches live in this survival context where they'll take on anybody and then they start butting heads and the egos, and it's just not a win-win. So there, at this stage in my life, remember I said that it has to be dignified work. It has to bring meaning to my life, and therefore, hopefully, it's going to bring meaning to your life. And so once we get past that, I go into my methodology, and the first thing I work with people on is having them understand how performance works. And when I use the word performance, I use it loosely because it's a very powerful word. Performance, and the definition I'm using on anything that I'm doing, any action that I'm taking, I'm performing. Working's performing, running, anything that I'm doing in the action form, Ralph is performing, and that employer or employee is performing. And so I have them look at, one, that how situations occur to them arises in language. And how they perform is all out of how they see themselves or other people. And some trainers say fact versus interpretation. That's an easier way to say it. Yeah, it's like, here's what happened and here's what I made up what happened. So we first work on the first step of how things are occurring to me is how I'm seeing them. And how I'm seeing them, I have it as a fact. And they have to come to that grips. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the reality. Okay. And then I work with them going, okay, if how situations occur to me, I'm interpreting them, then how situations occur to me arises in my language. Okay, that makes sense. Yes. How I'm seeing it arises in what's coming out of my mouth. It also arises in language I call the unsaid language, which is more powerful than the verbal or linguistic language. And the unsaid language, the definition I'll give for that is any action of symbolic intent. Any action of symbolic intent. Examples, disappointments. That's an action of symbolic intent. Judgments, interpretations, resentments. So those are the unsaid. Body language, tone of my voice, my eyebrow going up, rolling my eyes, pictures, drawings, how people dress. So that's the unsaid language. And so I work with people on, okay, how you see it arises in language. And to transform your organization, you have to adapt and learn to develop what I call future-based language. Future-based language transforms how I see things in my organization. And I'm going to give you a quick blurb on future-based language. Future-based language, or we call declared language, they come in what we call speech acts. Dr. Fernando Flores in the 70s coined this and made it famous in California in the 70s and the 80s. And a declaration would be a speech act. So that's future-based language. A promise is a speech act. That's future-based language. A request, a commitment. And so I work with groups of people on rewiring their language so that it comes out verbally or non-verbally as future-based language. So then they begin to have different interpretations through their language of what they want their company to look like.
Yes, absolutely. And, so in their personal lives, I'm imagining.
Everything falls out of those three steps I take people through. How I see it, that's how I'm going to act. How I see it comes out of language.
Yes.
If I want to have a different result, I have to start with different language. And a lot of coaches, performance coaches, they focus on the action one would need to take
Mm-hmm.
Do this, Ralph, and here, read this book, and go drink this water, and go la 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 la, and go forgive your mother, and that's okay. To me, it doesn't get a source of it, right? That's only putting a Band-Aid on it.
Mm-mm.
You need to go start rewiring your language and start making these declarations into the unknown. A lot of people talk about leadership and management. When they're talking about leadership, they're talking mainly about management. They're describing, right? I can hire and fire you. That's a management function. Budget's a management function.
Right.
Leadership, leaders create what isn't. So the leader's job is not to manage the books, not to do the hiring and firing. That's a manager. Leaders create what isn't. They bring the impossible, make it possible.
Mm-hmm.
And
so we do this. We do this in hypnosis. We often use future-based language.
Okay, great.
Of already seeing someone and implanting those suggestions of like, you are already there. It's a given, right? And let's put that into the transformational process there. Not, oh, I'm going to get there and I'm going to do this to get there. And, people need to take those steps, but let's see yourself there already. Let's make that declaration.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah. Fascinating.
And there's a big body of work on future-based language that a lot of people aren't privy to. Because I was talking to a gentleman a few days ago, a psychologist I was interviewing for my own show, and he said because it's just not popular, it doesn't sell books, right?
Yeah.
He'd be honest. He goes, it just doesn't sell books, right? What sells books is the artsy stuff and the drama and the stories and the fix it and look at the diet books. There's about 40 that come out every day.
Right.
But I'm still overweight.
Yeah. It's interesting. The episode that I'm doing on goals is about like when you're writing your goals, you write them as if they already happened. That's future-based language.
Correct. Yes. Declaration.
Like not like I'm going to, drive a new car in 6 months. It's like in 6 months, I am driving a new car and it feels really nice. And, I love the color or whatever that is for someone, right?
Yeah. And to be
thing.
Yes. And to be an effective coach, you've really got to participate in your own learning. That's
absolutely.
one of the big things. All of our consultants, we go through some rigorous training with ourselves on our own learning. And I'll give you a funny one. One of the parts that I did is I wanted to solve a Rubik's Cube. You remember the Rubik's Cube?
Yes.
And when I was a young boy, we had a Rubik's Cube, and we used to cheat. We would pull the stickers off of it, and we never had we didn't have a book, and only a few kids could solve it. And I don't know if you know this, but it was invented in 1973 by a gentleman in Hungary, and it's actually one of the top 10 toys still purchased today in the world.
Wow.
And it was more of an experiment he did for a class, and it took him a month to solve the Rubik's Cube. So I wanted to practice my own learning because I've been working on a lot of different learning styles. I got this cube, I downloaded the book, and I'm like, I am too old. I'm 47. I cannot solve a Rubik's Cube. And my kids were going away for the summer, and I told them, I said, when you get back in 3 weeks, Daddy will have this cube solved. Future-based language.
Yes.
And they got back, and I'll have to send you the tape because they recorded me when they got back in town. I solved the cube in about 2.5 minutes.
Awesome.
But that was future-based language of me putting a declaration out there and then figuring out who I needed to be, what I needed to do it. So that's the example.
Yeah.
And I have evidence. See, it's different than telling you about the book to read. But if I don't have a case study on myself, I'm not as powerful as I am if I did it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So we are running up to the end of our time here. It has been a real pleasure to hear about your process, and it's definitely unique. I think it absolutely differentiates you from, the average coach going along, right, doing their stuff. Sounds fascinating. Is there some place that you can point listeners who want to learn about how to work with you?
They can email me for now and my email is Broward, like Broward County, 621 @gmail.com.
Okay. So Broward621 @gmail.com, and I'll also put those in the show notes.
Great.
I know you're also launching a website. It should be out by the time this airs.
That's correct.
And that's Ralph2.0.com?
That's correct.
Ralph at 2.0.com.
Ralph at 2.0.com, yes.
Okay, and I'm going to put that in the show notes as well so people can click right over to it.
Awesome.
Right.
I appreciate your time.
Any other resources that you want to give right before we end?
Yeah, there's some books I would highly recommend, maybe your readers that like to read.
Uh-huh.
The one book I'm reading now is called The Power of Positivity,
Mm-hmm.
and that's by Dr.
Great
Lorena
book.
Bruning. Great book. The Art of Learning.
Mm-hmm.
That's a powerful book. Talent Code by Daniel Cole. Talent Code.
Okay.
And then one last one, The Believing Brain.
Interesting.
That's by Michael Shermer, The Believing Brain. That's just some of the stuff that I'm engaged in. So I want to
Wonderful.
give that to people.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
What a wonderful interview with Ralph Campbell. I really enjoyed myself. I had a couple of takeaways. One is I enjoyed hearing about his transformational model of professional coaching and how the personal affects the professional. Like, that is so true. Everything we do, even in terms of our body language and the way we speak, all of that affects the professional and our ability to succeed and feel good and happy about our professional lives. So that was really interesting. Another thing that I love, and you could see how much I enjoyed talking to him about it, is the future-based language and setting goals in future-based language. That is something I talk about in another podcast in terms of writing your goals. And it is using that to achieve what you want. So if you want to be CEO of your company in 2 years, you write the goal like, in 2 years, I am CEO of my company and I accomplished this, this, and this to get there. So that's a tip for this week. I hope you have a wonderful, productive week, and peace, people.
Want free hypnosis files or to learn more about Dr. Liz, her books, products, and services? Head over to drlizhypnosis.com to get in on all the great resources. If you liked this episode, do Dr. Liz a favor and rate, review, and subscribe over at iTunes. Or better yet, tell a friend about the podcast so we can continue to grow our amazing audience. Lastly, be sure to send in your feedback to Dr. Liz at drlizhypnosis.com. That's DRLIZ at drlizhypnosis.com. We love to hear from you.